To me, I'm disappointed. And my disappointment is just what sports has meant to so many kids and like what it meant to me. I grew up in a tough situation. Never involved in any type of gang violence or anything, because in my town in the Midwest, you know, they're hardworking families, steel mill people, just trying to get ends to meet. The gang violence didn't start coming to those type of communities till later on. You know, so I'm empathetic of the current peer pressure that young people and what the decisions that they have to make. But there's so many kids that have been rescued from the streets by sports, and I thought this was going to be another case. Shannon and I, we had the luxury of sports providing an education for us. And in providing that education, it also provided us an opportunity to meet different people, to speak better, to eat better things, to try to dress better, try to make a better life for Paw and my grandma, and my sister, and all those things. And this is a colossal disaster. And the kid had all the help in the world. He went to the best schools. They offer everything from a medical to clinical to any type of help the athlete would need. Now, I personally know this because I was on the campus with Erin Hernandez at Florida. When they went through that great era, I happened to be a good friend with Urban Meyer. And I traveled to that campus plenty of times to talk, to the team and also the athletes, because at that time, Jeremy Foley, the huge athletic director, he was into trying to provide the athletes with all types of help outside of the university. So I got a chance to meet Erin. Not only him, Tim Tebow, Percy Harvin, Major Wright, the Pounceys, Spikes. Man, they had some ball players on that team. And to see how sports was not able to rescue him because he wouldn't let go of the streets. Now, Skip, you and I worked in the community he grew up in Bristol, Connecticut. And people wonder, how could this come from Bristol? Well, you see a lot of cities like Bristol that are within 2 or 3 miles of a large city, Boston, New York. There's a lot of gang activity in these little cities now. And that's what Erin was involved with as a youth. Was a high school All-American, tight end, great athlete, basketball player. You know, one of the best athletes ever come out of Connecticut. Went to Florida, and he still didn't give up the streets. This is one of the best examples of people say, well, money changes you. No, it doesn't. Money just makes you bigger what you already are.
That's it.
And this is exactly what happened to him. As he went up the scale in athletics, he got more and more violent. He was associated with violence at the University of Florida. Never proved to be guilty in the court of law, but associated, had some other skirmishes, got suspended, supposedly for positive drug tests. Dropped in the draft, should have been a first rounder. Then you go to Bill Belichick. I mean, they can rehab anybody, anything. Goes on to play in the Super Bowl, career cut short. Like, to me, sports has saved so many of these kids, but sports couldn't save him because he wouldn't give up the streets. Like, he wouldn't give up gangbanging. He wouldn't give up hanging with the guys he grew up with. And you have to make a decision. Not only what do you want to do, but what do you want to be? Because being in the National Football League, it's tough. It's tough being a pro athlete, the exposure. And my reaction was, he had been presented the American dream, and he found himself in a box. And to me, you know, let the investigation and everything, don't want to get ahead of that. But to me, he decided, I can't live in this box anymore. And that is the tragedy.
CC, sports, the only thing from the time I was probably 9 or 10 years old, the only thing my brother and I thought about, we broke down a many a saplings of young pine trees. We and got a lot of red bug bites. Me and my brother would sit on there for hours and hours after school. What we want to do. How do we get Granny out of this environment? How can we not have to eat what we eat on a daily basis? How do we get out of cement floors, cinder block, tin roof? I laid in my grandmother's bed for 20 years and looked up at the ceiling and I could see the sky. Laying in my house, I said, all I ever wanted to do was make my grandmother proud. To make her proud was to leave Glenville, Georgia. And when I came back, when my brother and I came back, said, Granny, we ain't staying at Route 4, Box 385, Glenville, Georgia anymore. We going to 204 J Street. That's all I ever wanted, Skip. Some people do things out of necessity. So whether you sold drugs, and I don't condone it, but I'm saying some people, when people don't feel they have a choice,
yes,
they will resort to measures that's not always favorable, that's not always on the up and up. But once I remove myself from that equation, or an athlete removes himself from that equation, for you to still have that same mindset that you had as a struggling youth when you have millions, tells you just the type of person that you are. As Cece said, money doesn't change you. Money might change your zip code. It might change your bank account. It might change your area code. It makes you more of what you already are. It gives you an opportunity, because if you're a druggie, Skip, guess what? I ain't got to worry about no nick. I ain't got to worry about no dime. I can get a pound now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If I got a drinking problem, I ain't drinking that cheap stuff. I got that real good liquor now. Skip.
But Shannon, you can't project your childhood on his childhood.
No.
Very different.
No.
Your mindset was completely different than his mindset. And I'm going to bring it back to Cris, because Cris has fought addiction before. I grew up around addiction, and I believe this is the equal of addiction.
He was addicted to a lifestyle.
He was addicted to a lifestyle where he wasn't happy unless he was going on the edge to over the edge and living the secret life of a criminal, of a gangster. And that's what made him the happiest, because you couldn't have a more blessed path than he had. He goes to he's the Gatorade Player of the Year in Connecticut. He goes to Florida, plays for, you could argue, the best coach in America with Tim Tebow, and you go win a national championship with Percy Harvin, and then you get to go to the dynastic New England Patriots, and you get to play with the greatest quarterback ever and arguably the greatest coach ever.
After a bunch of teams had taken him off the board.
I think about 90% of them took him off the board.
Smack dab in the middle of a dynasty.
Blessed, 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 blessed. And it didn't matter, because there's addiction going on that I don't even think the Patriots could see, because Mr. Kraft finally said, he duped me. I bought it, because I've been around Aaron at ESPN, where we both worked, and he was on his best behavior. He was pretty convincing when he was on his best behavior, because he's smart, man, and Belichick loved him because he could chalkboard it. You know, he could whiteboard it.
Yes.
And according to everybody at the Patriots, he came early and stayed late and practiced as hard as anybody. So everything looked great from the outside in, or even from the inside out in some ways. But when he went home, man, he went to some other world, and that made him happy. So do I have any sympathy for? I can't have it. He murdered a guy. I think he murdered several people. I don't know that for a fact, but I think he did, or tried to.